Welcome. Hi, g'day, and kia ora, as we like to say down under. Welcome to the Imaginations DIY channel. As this remodel kicks into gear, the dining room is getting a facelift. So let me set the scene here. The dining room was a very traditionally set up room, so the fixtures were very elaborate. A couple of things that we had to deal with on the actual room front were there was some sort of black soot type markings along the outline of the ceiling. Unsure what they were actually from, if there was a smoker in the house previously that stained the ceiling, or if something had actually seeped through the ceiling itself, just around the edges, unknown. And secondly, the wallpaper border. In the pictures you can see it is a white border. That isn't actually the case underneath. There is 2 layers of wallpaper there. Pulling off the first layer itself wasn't hard. It was the second layer, which was again a very elaborate papering of colours of greens and a burgundy red. Then on top of the wallpaper border issue, the wall itself is heavily textured, and trying to match that even if or when the wallpaper comes off will be fun. Okay, so enough of the before, let's get into this. The first thing to go was the chandelier. That was replaced fairly early on, and this is what we replaced it with. This specific chandelier was from Wayfair. I have, however, subsequently found it on Amazon as well, so I will add both those links below for you guys if you're interested. Had a lot of positive feedback about this one. As you can see, at the start of this remodel, this room had become pretty much a dumping ground for furniture and toys and anything else that needed to be moved out of the way to facilitate doing a remodel of a different room. So this one is going to be interesting because I am working around a lot. But here we go. Let's get into it. Let me show you how this went. Step 1, make room for movement. Step 2, cover the beautiful new light. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a cupboard where I accumulate plastic bags from shopping. Now, I don't always get plastic, but the times I do, they just get stuffed away in this cupboard and they get reused for various things. And I thought in this case, what I could do was just flatten them out, just grab some scissors, cut along the seams, the side and back, and create a sort of plastic, sort of semi-see-through blanket type thing, which I could then sort of drape around the chandelier to protect it while I am in the process of painting. Okay, so that should be good to go. Now it's just a case of getting up that ladder and affixing it around the top of the light. And voila, as they say, let there be light. So the first thing to tackle with the room is the wallpaper border around the top. One option would be to keep this. Let's think about that. Exactly. No. Now, getting rid of it is not as easy as you would think. I was able to peel the initial white top piece off, but it left its backing behind it. Then when I started trying to remove that backing using water and various other means, I was able to get some pieces off, but then there is, for some reason, a second wallpaper border underneath. Yay! And unfortunately, that second layer of wallpaper has been there so long that it's kind of melded into the wall itself, and no means of trying to remove it through lots of different options that I have found online. It was just taking way too much time. So removing it went off the table. I found a guy online that has a painting business, and what he actually recommended to do was to use a compound over where it seams the wallpaper to the wall and just sort of blend it in. He recommended doing 3 coats. So the first coat, then sand, second coat, sand, and then third coat. And each coat of that was a wider blend. So I guess a little bit like you do with the joint compound on the drywall. So I decided that sounded a lot easier than what I had found out about removing what was there. So I moved forward with that. And when I was at Home Depot, I actually found a texture spray, which I thought may actually be able to blend in and just make it more of a seamless coverage, so to speak. So I bought that, and I thought I would give that a go as well. Now, for actually completing the room, I am splitting the room into 2, so I'm going to prototype this only on one side of the room, just to make sure it works and I'm not wasting my time. Using the test sprays, I was able to determine which setting would be the right one for my purpose. And I am very glad now that I was only doing half a room at a time, because this texture spray did not turn out successfully in this situation. Even at the smallest setting, it provided a sort of flat, bubbly type texture, whereas I really needed the grainy, sandy, strong looking texture. And now on to the part where I actually get to see something for my work, the painting. So for months now I have had swatches up around the house, like over a dozen different paint colors in various positions throughout the room, low on the wall, high on the wall, close to light, and in the dark corners, just to figure out what everything looks like in the different situations, to try and find the one that works the best. This turned out to be a really good idea in practice, because I got to tell you, a lot of those greys I picked had way much more blue in them than I was expecting. So actually seeing them on the wall and contrasting against the couch and the light and everything else, it really, really helped with the decisions. As it turns out, having multicolored walls with lots of different paints on them is actually a talking point for most people that enter your house. What a surprise! Now I have to put my hand up and say I have learnt from my mistakes, and one of those mistakes was doing the windowsill too early. I found out the hard way that I have a habit of splashing paint, and that windowsill became a target for splashes further down the line. So I'll be coming back to fix that up a bit later. Okay, so I've just finished a round of the white on, well, half the room, because I'm only doing half the room at the moment. And just one thing I learnt that is really, really handy. I've got a gallon bag here, and I'm going to be using these again. I'm going to do another white on the trim once it's dry. I'm just going to put those in there and into the fridge. Keep them cool, and then it means I don't have to clean them in between, because if I haven't mentioned it, I hate cleaning. And here we go, setting up for coat number 2. And of course I've got my trusty tools out of the fridge, and I am ready to go. Ha! How about that? Video bombed by my dog, who looks like he's having a bit more fun than I am. Ever wish there was more than one of you to get a job done? Well, with the power of video editing, I can make that happen. Pity I couldn't make it happen in real life, because this took me, I want to say, 2 or 3 days between painting, drying, and, of course, working around the piles that are in the middle of the room. And now we're on the subject. it is time for the second half of the room. So that means everything gets moved to the finished side. By splitting the room in two, it kind of feels like deja vu stepping back through each of the steps. And to be honest, it just made the whole room feel like it took longer. Blah. Being able to continue something across the whole room would have greatly simplified the effort. But alas, it wasn't able to be, and so it was on to the texture version 2. This time, instead of using the spray, I just used the mortar itself and applied it with a standard kitchen sponge to do it like a stipple effect, which produced a much more evident texture. Not 100% match by any means, but totally sufficient for this project. And with a layer of primer over it and then the paint layers, that wallpaper border was a distant memory. Or some may say a distant nightmare, based on the effort to get rid of it. Room part 2, as I'm calling it, involves getting the trim work done and the ceilings and the 2 layers of wall paint. Plus, I've decided to paint the window frames black to give the room a bit of pop. The curtains I'll be using are white shears, and I'll be taking them all the way up to the ceiling. The black frames will be able to be seen through them, so I'm hoping this will lift the contemporary vibe that I'm trying to get for the room. The windows came with all sorts of fun rabbit holes that I went down and somehow climbed back out of. Somewhere throughout time, they had become painted closed, yet a nest of earwigs had managed to move in between the frame and the sash, and they weren't happy being found, and what a surprise, they did not want to leave. This is the second place now that I've decided to colour block black next to white. You would think I would try and make my life a little bit easier and not do something that makes any imperfections very visible, but no. So there was a lot of clean up and tidying up those little imperfections that had to be done towards the end. And even now, when I look closely, I can still see some of the black bleeding into the white. So I just look away and pretend I don't see it. I can also make strategic use of the curtains if I have visitors, so it won't be visible to anyone else either. For some reason that completely escapes me, I decided to change out the window locks as part of turning the frames black, and as these specific locks were no longer being manufactured, I got the closest I could find and had to retrofit them, which turned out to be the perfect job for my new multi-tool and gave me a chance to practice with that. With all the painting and window work now done, it's a case of getting the fit out started. Just one big roadblock to remove for that to be able to be started, emptying out the pile that's accumulated in the middle of the room. The old table had to be dismantled and it will be put in a yard sale at some point in the future. Same with the doll's house. Luckily for me, it's on wheels, so I can just keep rolling it out of the way until I can find it a temporary home. The future planned renovation of the dining room and kitchen area will see the dining room be about 5 feet smaller width-wise. A wall is being added, reducing that width to create a walk-in pantry. The wall between the kitchen and the dining also, as you can see, that has got the piano leaning against it at the moment, that will be going. So for a while, scale-wise, the new table I chose for the space will be too small. However, longer term, it will be perfect. The old table was mid-century modern. The new table I picked out was whitewashed oak and much more contemporary in style. The top of it's got a cool splayed radial effect. So putting together the table and chairs, although it did take a while, it was fairly straightforward. Right up until the point at which I discovered that one of the floor chairs had come with 2 sets of back legs. And of course, as these chairs had been sitting in boxes for nearly 2 months waiting for me to work on this room, there was no way I was going to get the correct piece by contacting the retailer. And besides, the response I've received in a prior situation where there was an issue with a part was that the whole delivery had to be returned and new stock issued. And I was not interested in doing that. So, channeling MacGyver, I got creative and came up with a solution to build up a set of the back legs to match the angle of the front legs on the other chairs. Although MacGyver would have used chewing gum and duct tape, I did elect to use a much more enduring version of adhesive. And finally, onto the last element of fit out for the room, the curtains. Now, I have to be honest and say that based on this attempt you're about to see and another upstairs, I really suck at putting up curtains. I wanted to have these curtains extra wide and hanging from the ceiling, but after installing a hook in the ceiling for a hanging plant and realizing how hard the ceiling wood is, I had no desire to have to drill into it again. So I decided to run the brackets as close as I could to the ceiling by fixing them to the crown moulding. Somewhere in my measuring, I either mismeasured the bracket location or miscalculated the width of the curtain rods, because when it came time to hang them up, the span was too long for the rods, but damn if I didn't try to make it work. Until, that is, I nearly killed the dog. Lucky for me, he is smarter than me and saw it coming about 10 seconds before he would have worn the curtains. After seeing the danger of the situation, I figured out that I could reuse the old really thin rods that were there originally and were long enough as a way to reinforce the new ones across the extension and join areas. So finally, after about 3 unsuccessful attempts, I did get it to work, and they are solid enough to use that way. And there you have it. It's done. The dining room is ready to use. Yay! Somewhere to sit and eat food that is not the couch. I finally get to show you how it all came together. The room of 2 halves is now well and truly one whole. Obviously, the table and chairs are the main functional element in the room. However, I did manage to squeeze some storage in the form of some shelving and a buffet that'll be able to house some arts and crafts items, papers and pens needed for homework, and a few miscellaneous games and puzzles that I like to keep out in the open in the hope that something non-electronic may actually get used occasionally. I've kept the musical instruments also out front and centre to encourage practice. And as for the greenery you see, I've actually mixed in both real and faux plants to try and reduce my maintenance requirements. This is definitely a major style change, from the old and stately to the comfortable and contemporary. We are very happy with how our attempt at a cool contemporary vibe has ended up. In fact, the room is now so welcoming that it is now used as a multifunction hangout space. Probably until the rest of the living areas get remodeled. Funny how that works. Well, that's it from me for this one. Until next time, take care out there, and if you haven't already hit the subscribe button so you get notified for the next one, give it a go. Next one up is a kids' room remodel. We're going from pink to panda. Yes, you heard right. Crazy things are afoot in this house.